Nothing says teamwork like a boss who bans chairs for productivity. 1. The chairless revolution. One CEO decided that comfort was the enemy of efficiency. His grand plan? Remove every single chair in the office to create what he called a dynamic standing-based workflow. Within days, the staff resembled a yoga class that never ends, just constant wobbling, leaning, and quiet despair. But the real punchline wasn't the aching legs. It was where the money from the sold chairs went. He used it to commission a life-sized marble statue of himself pointing toward the break room. The employees now had to stand all day under the gaze of their seated boss, carved forever in glorious ergonomic comfort. The HR complaint summed it up perfectly. We've reached peak irony. Our manager sits better as a statue than as a leader. 2. The great idea jar meltdown. A manager once introduced an anonymous idea jar to encourage creativity. Sounds wholesome, right? Then he added a fun little twist. Every Monday, he'd read the ideas aloud and make the team guess who wrote them. What began as a suggestion box quickly evolved into a corporate witch hunt. People stopped pitching solutions and started planting decoy ideas like replace all meetings with interpretive dance, just to confuse him. Within a month, innovation was dead, paranoia was thriving, and the jar was filled mostly with paper scraps that said, "Please stop." The experiment finally ended when the boss guessed one idea correctly and fired the employee for negative energy. Corporate America, ladies and gentlemen, where creativity goes to die under fluorescent lights. 3. Brenda and the salad stock photo. When a manager decided to save money on professional headshots, he took DIY to disturbing new heights. He went online, found random stock photos that vaguely resembled his employees, and uploaded them to the company website. Brenda from accounting, mild, introverted, cardigan-loving Brenda, was horrified to find her official corporate photo replaced by a woman laughing maniacally while eating salad. Clients started emailing her diet tips. One even asked if she'd gone vegan. Her official complaint read like a tragic poem. "I just want my real face back." When confronted, the boss defended himself by saying, "You should be flattered. She's attractive and health-conscious." Brenda now goes by Salad Brenda, and HR quietly renamed the policy Visual Rebranding Gone Wrong. 4. The vacation photo policy. Only in corporate life can someone weaponize happiness. One employee filed a formal complaint because their boss posted photos from his vacation looking too happy. The manager had shared pictures of himself sipping margaritas in Hawaii, smiling in every frame like a man who hadn't opened an email in weeks. The employee called it demoralizing and an ostentatious display of relaxation. HR had to hold a meeting about appropriate emotional presentation during time off. The proposed solution? A new company policy requiring managers to post only modestly cheerful photos, preferably looking slightly stressed or holding a laptop near a beach. The boss complied, uploading a follow-up photo of himself frowning into a coconut, captioned, "Back to work." It's the kind of rule that perfectly captures corporate logic. Rather than pay people enough to take a vacation, just make everyone feel equally miserable about the idea of one. 5. The stealth boss complaint. One employee accused their manager of being too quiet. The boss had a habit of appearing silently behind people's chairs mid-spreadsheet, like a corporate ninja. After several near heart attacks, the employee filed a complaint citing workplace-induced jump scares and adrenaline spikes harmful to long-term cardiac health. Their proposed fix? The manager should wear a small bell around his neck, like a cat, so employees could hear him approaching. HR didn't know whether to laugh or approve it, but here's the best part. The boss actually agreed. For a week, he jingled through the office like Santa Claus in business casual, until upper management stepped in and declared the bell unprofessional. Productivity dropped immediately afterward. Turns out, nothing keeps employees more focused than knowing their manager could materialize behind them at any moment. 6. The psychic consultant. A self-proclaimed clairvoyant employee once accused their boss of ignoring supernatural insights. The worker claimed they'd had a vision that the new marketing strategy would fail and warned the boss not to proceed. When the boss went ahead anyway, the employee filed a grievance for willful disregard of psychic forecasting. HR had to write this into a real document. Manager failed to consult the astral plane before finalizing Q3 strategy. The complaint even included a proposed solution: mandatory tarot readings before major business decisions. To their credit, HR took it seriously enough to hold a meeting, where the clairvoyant predicted the coffee machine would break. It did. For one glorious week, half the office started asking her for stock tips. Then she predicted a 400% sales surge that never came, and management quietly retired the idea of mystical leadership. But for a brief shining moment, the entire company was powered by caffeine, spreadsheets, and pure cosmic confidence. 7. The doorless transparency policy. Some managers take open-door policy too literally. One overachiever decided to physically remove his office door entirely. Ultimate transparency, he called it. What followed was an unfiltered broadcast of his entire personal life. His employees overheard everything, from scheduling his colonoscopy to tearfully telling his mom he missed her casserole. The complaint read, "We now know more about our manager's intestines than our Q4 goals." The company tried to fix it by installing a beaded curtain for privacy without barriers, which only made things worse. It sounded like a wind chime every time someone walked by. Eventually, he got a door again, but not before the office learned way too much about his health insurance deductible. The moral? Transparency is good, but so is insulation, from both noise and oversharing. E8. The office ghost management issue. In one small accounting firm, an employee filed a complaint about management's failure to properly address supernatural disturbances. Apparently, the office was haunted by a ghost named Clarence, who liked to rattle the coffee machine and flicker the lights. The worker claimed the boss's skepticism was disrespectful to the spirit world, and that Clarence had grown more aggressive because of it. HR found themselves drafting an official memo with the phrase "improve spectral communication." To appease the situation, the manager jokingly left a cup of coffee on the counter labeled "For Clarence." The disturbances stopped for a week. Then the coffee cup shattered on its own, and everyone refused to use that break room again. Eventually, the company relocated the espresso machine, just to be safe. The boss now jokes that Clarence got promoted to head of morale, but no one laughs too loudly, just in case he's listening. 9. The coffee machine dictator. One manager took micromanagement to an art form by seizing control of the office coffee machine. It was a new, high-tech model that could be operated with a smartphone app. Instead of letting people use it freely, the manager disabled the manual buttons and declared himself the sole beverage administrator. Employees had to email him a formal request for coffee, which he would then review and either approve or deny before remotely pressing the brew button from his desk. He even created a spreadsheet to track caffeine consumption for productivity analysis. The complaint that followed was legendary. "Our caffeine access is now subject to tyranny." Things reached a boiling point when one desperate worker tried to bribe him with homemade cookies for a latte. HR eventually stepped in, citing abuse of power and unnecessary bean-based hierarchy. The manager defended his system as efficiency optimization. It was eventually undone when the Wi-Fi went down and the entire office went cold turkey for a day. Productivity plummeted, tempers flared, and someone was caught smuggling instant coffee packets in their purse like contraband. The machine was finally restored to manual use, though the manager still refers to that dark day as the caffeine rebellion. 10. Breathing inequality. In perhaps the most bizarre workplace complaint ever filed, an employee accused their manager of breathing unfairly. The complaint alleged that the boss inhaled too loudly during meetings, using a disproportionate amount of office oxygen and creating an atmosphere of respiratory dominance. HR thought it was a prank, until the employee provided a detailed chart showing breath patterns and air occupation ratios. The solution they proposed? Scheduled breathing breaks, where the manager would be required to step outside every 30 minutes to rebalance airflow. When HR declined to oxygen regulate the workplace, the employee escalated the complaint to corporate headquarters, citing hostile environmental conditions. The HR rep's report later described the situation as a tragic collision between personal space and atmospheric science. Eventually, they moved the employee to a remote position, where, ironically, they complained that their Wi-Fi felt suffocating. Somewhere out there, that manager still jokes that he's the only boss ever accused of respiratory bullying. If nothing else, it proved that in the modern workplace, even breathing wrong can be a liability. 11. The silent meeting experiment. A startup founder once decided that talking is inefficient. So, in the name of innovation, he introduced Silent Mondays. No verbal communication allowed. Only Slack messages, sticky notes, or mime-like gestures. At first, it seemed quirky and creative. Then chaos set in. The IT team couldn't fix servers because no one could yell instructions. A marketing intern nearly quit after misinterpreting a thumbs-up emoji as approval for a $5,000 ad buy. One employee tried to use sign language but accidentally flipped the boss off. By lunch, people were whispering like fugitives, hiding in stairwells to have forbidden conversations. The HR complaint called the experiment a psychological hostage situation. When the founder finally ended it, he proudly declared the experiment a success in nonverbal adaptability. The team immediately held a celebratory meeting where everyone just screamed. It turns out that silence isn't golden. It's expensive, confusing, and occasionally obscene. 12. The temperature war. Every office has thermostat drama, but this one became an all-out climate war. The manager insisted on keeping the office at a crisp 60 degrees to boost alertness. The staff retaliated with electric blankets, space heaters, and one employee who brought in a pet lizard purely to guilt-trip management. The complaint that reached HR was 12 pages long, featuring graphs comparing productivity to finger numbness. Someone even cited OSHA regulations for thermal comfort. The HR rep tried to mediate, suggesting a compromise at 72 degrees, but the manager called that lazy weather. Eventually, maintenance found a small rebellion brewing, literally. Employees had been taking turns secretly adjusting the thermostat with a hidden screwdriver. When caught, they called themselves the Warm Resistance. After months of standoff, the AC broke, and the boss finally raised the temperature. The entire office erupted into applause and heat rash. To this day, they refer to that summer as the thaw. 13. The motivational mirror incident. A new manager wanted to boost morale by installing motivational mirrors in the break room. Each mirror had a sticker that said, "You are the company's greatest asset." At first, it seemed harmless, until employees realized the mirrors were two-way. Behind them, the manager's new observation office. He claimed it was for casual performance monitoring, but mostly used it to see who took too many snack breaks. The complaint that followed was half horror story, half roast. "I just discovered my self-worth speech was being live-streamed to the boss." HR investigated, and sure enough, there he was, sitting behind the glass with a clipboard and popcorn. When confronted, he said, "I wanted to reflect success." The mirrors were removed immediately, but not before someone stuck a final post-it note to one that read, "Objects in reflection are creepier than they appear." 14. The birthday ban. One well-intentioned but wildly misguided boss decided that birthdays were a productivity distraction. No more cake, no singing, no balloons, just a dignified acknowledgement in the Monday newsletter. The office morale collapsed faster than a deflated party hat. The first employee to break the rule was a beloved receptionist who dared to bring cupcakes for her own birthday. The boss confiscated them like contraband and replaced them with a bowl of carrot sticks labeled "Approved Celebration Snack." The staff rebelled immediately. They began celebrating unbirthdays instead, bringing cupcakes every Friday in honor of no one in particular. The complaint filed with HR called the policy an emotional dictatorship frosted with despair. When corporate finally stepped in, they lifted the ban, but not before one final act of defiance. On the boss's birthday, the staff threw a full-blown surprise party featuring a life-sized piñata shaped like him. HR called it inappropriate. The employees called it closure. 15. The positive vibes only rule. A marketing manager read one too many self-help books and decided negativity was the root of all inefficiency. From that moment, employees were forbidden to use any words deemed low energy. Problem became opportunity, deadline became moment of delivery, and crisis was rebranded as a growth spurt. One poor intern got written up for saying, "We're out of toner," because it wasn't affirmational. The complaint that followed was glorious. "We can't fix anything because everything is already great." Meetings became an absurd theater of toxic optimism, people smiling while the printer burned in the background. HR eventually forced the manager to attend a realistic communication seminar, which he proudly described as a positivity enhancement retreat. By the time he returned, the company had replaced his office quote wall with a sign reading, "Caution, reality zone ahead." Even the plants looked relieved. 16. The productivity bell. A warehouse supervisor introduced what he called a motivation system, a giant brass bell mounted near the entrance. Every time an employee finished a task, they had to ring it loudly so everyone would applaud. At first, it was fun. Then it became psychological warfare. Some workers started faking small achievements just to ring the bell first, while others avoided it altogether to preserve their sanity. By the end of the week, the constant clanging had driven everyone half mad. The complaint accused management of weaponizing morale. One worker said she heard the bell in her sleep. Another compared it to a Pavlovian nightmare with overtime. HR eventually banned the bell, but not before one final act of chaos. The night shift dismantled it and hid it in the ceiling tiles. Months later, it randomly fell out during a meeting, right when the boss announced a new employee engagement initiative. The timing was so perfect that everyone applauded instinctively, then groaned in collective trauma. 17. The remote work camera law. During the pandemic, one manager created a rule that cameras must be on at all times during Zoom calls. No exceptions. He said it fostered connection. In reality, it fostered paranoia. Employees became experts in faking enthusiasm while hiding chaos behind carefully angled webcams. One mother angled her camera to hide her toddler army. Another worker built a cardboard office wall in his living room. The complaint, titled "Digital Oppression in HD," argued that constant visibility was exhausting. When the boss announced random camera checks, someone retaliated by looping a pre-recorded video of themselves nodding thoughtfully. It worked for 2 months, until the manager called their name mid-loop and they kept smiling silently like a sitcom character frozen in time. HR intervened, ruling that excessive surveillance does not equal productivity. The cameras went off, and morale shot up instantly. Ironically, so did performance. 18. The pajama policy reversal. In an effort to reclaim professionalism, a new CEO banned pajamas during remote work. Yes, even though no one could see below the waist. "Dress for success," he said during a Zoom call in which his Wi-Fi froze mid-blink. Employees responded by turning the rule into performance art. One team showed up to meetings wearing tuxedos and prom dresses. Another held a business formal pajama day featuring silk robes and bow ties. The complaint that reached HR read, "We've achieved peak irony. A man who can't connect to the internet is lecturing us about presentation." After public ridicule on the company Slack, the CEO reversed the rule but claimed it was part of the experiment. The next week, he appeared on camera in a full suit jacket and unmistakably plaid pajama pants. No one said a word. Everyone just silently applauded. 19. The Wellness Hour. Disaster One HR director decided the team needed mandatory relaxation. Every Friday, all work stopped for a full hour of corporate-approved calm. The problem? Relaxation was now micromanaged. Employees were forced to do synchronized breathing exercises over Zoom, while a wellness coach in Bali told them to imagine floating above your workload. One guy fell asleep and started snoring through his unmuted mic. Another got written up for non-participatory posture. The complaint that followed was pure poetry. "I can't relax on command, while the same people who stress me out tell me to breathe." Eventually, the wellness hour was replaced with optional quiet reflection, which everyone used to check email in peace. Ironically, productivity actually went up the moment management stopped trying to force happiness. Turns out, the most relaxing thing a company can do is stop talking about relaxation. 20. The parking spot war. When a new manager took over, she decided parking spaces should be earned by daily performance. The top performer got the closest spot. The lowest had to park across the street, in the rain. Every morning became the Hunger Games with spreadsheets. People were arriving at 6 a.m. to get a head start. One worker even faked car trouble to gain sympathy points. The HR complaint accused management of turning commuting into blood sport. When the system was finally abolished, employees celebrated by spray painting "Equality Lot" on the asphalt. The boss tried to discipline them, but couldn't find parking close enough to get to the meeting on time. 21. The Fun Committee coup. In an effort to boost morale, the boss formed a fun committee. Within weeks, it became a corporate cult. Attendance at mandatory fun events was tracked, and employees who didn't attend karaoke nights were labeled uncooperative. One introvert filed a complaint titled "I'm being bullied by balloons." When HR investigated, they found the committee had its own logo, slogan, and a terrifying mascot named Marty the Motivation Mole. The program was eventually dissolved after a forced limbo competition caused an ergonomic injury. Ironically, the day the fun committee disbanded was the happiest day the office had in years. 22. The Trophy of Shame. To encourage accountability, a boss introduced the Who Messed Up Monday trophy, a golden toilet plunger awarded to whoever made the week's biggest mistake. At first, it seemed like lighthearted fun, but it quickly became psychological torture. People were sabotaging each other to avoid getting the plunger. One guy intentionally crashed the printer system just to nominate his rival. The HR complaint was simple: humiliation isn't a performance metric. The boss defended it as motivational symbolism. When corporate found out, they made him accept the plunger himself for poor leadership execution. He kept it on his desk for exactly 1 week before it mysteriously vanished. 23. The Corporate Campout One. Ambitious VP thought the team needed bonding through nature. He booked a 2-day camping retreat with no Wi-Fi, no beds, and no escape from upper management. The team-building exercises included trust falls near cliffs and mindfulness among mosquitoes. By nightfall, the CFO was crying in a tent, and the IT guy tried to roast a flash drive like a marshmallow. The complaint that followed simply read, "We went in as co-workers and came out as traumatized strangers." The VP defended the trip, claiming adversity builds teamwork. HR shut it down permanently after someone submitted a medical bill labeled tick-related burnout. And there you have it, 23 shining examples of leadership so bad it should come with a warning label. Which one deserves Employee of the Year for stupidity? You decide.